Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Edith Juguna. I'm the director of the network. We're excited to have you here to review the CTE dashboard. And to get us started, I will just quickly go over our agenda. So we'll start with welcome and introductions. We'll review the dashboard goals, and then we'll have a data overview and an opportunity for you to provide feedback. And then we'll engage with the data and we'll have reflections and closing. So I'll just quickly go over the goals of the dashboard. I know several of you have seen this before, but we think it's always important for us to reflect on why we're doing this. So our goal is to provide a tool to help communities make data-informed decisions and provide trends over time so that you can compare districts with other districts all in one setting, and then to highlight where communities are making progress and inform where more work is needed. And the dashboard also brings multiple sources of data together in one place and enables communities to download their data for further use. And as I know many of you have seen these symbols before, I know often folks are reluctant to engage with data because it's often used as a hammer to punish, but we really bring the orientation of using it as a flashlight to highlight where you're making progress and where additional work is needed. So again, I just want to thank you again for joining us. And without further ado, we'll kick it over to Mimusi to dive into the dashboard to share the data on CTE participation. And Mimusi, I'll stop sharing so you can share your screen.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mimusi Ntore. I work as a data analyst with Ed Systems, and I'm excited to unveil another view for the Success Network dashboard looking at CTE data. Excited to meet with a lot of folks in this chat last week in person when we talked about early college data and the ways in which the dashboard can be that flashlight tool, as Edith talked about, and hoping that this can kind of continue that momentum with the CTE data as well. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So what you'll see, again, if you're not new to the dashboard, this is a familiar site, which is the kind of landing page for each view of the dashboard, showing a map of Illinois. And what you'll see at the title is that this data that we're going to look at shows students participating in CTE programs. And it's not just, and it's participating, but that's kind of a broad term. We also have data on students that are deemed as concentrators in CTE programs as well. And so kind of what those definitions might mean in case you're not super familiar, this comes directly from the Illinois report card. If you go to the Career and Technical Education tab and click on this filter here, go down to participation. And this is literally the same data that I'll show you from the dashboard, but just kind of reimagined. If you click on Learn More, then it kind of gets into some history as well as these definitions of what participants versus concentrators are. And again, just participants, just so we're all on the same page, are students that have enrolled in at least one CTE course during the school year with an outcome of pass, fail, or incomplete, versus a concentrator, which is defined as a program concentrator in at least one classification instructional program. And it also is defined as students that have passed 2 or more distinct CTE courses. So when you see these terms of participant, concentrator, you can refer back to these definitions as to what we're talking about with the data. So with that, going back to the dashboard, a few kind of technical aspects. Again, for some of you, I know this isn't new, but for others who haven't seen this before, kind of the ways in which you could navigate this dashboard. So when you're looking at the map of Illinois, you can kind of take your mouse and hover over different district outlines, and kind of you might be drawn to particular areas depending on where you work, where you live. You may just be curious about particular areas or regions of the state. And as you kind of land on a district, you'll see the name of that district, if they're in the Success Network, which leadership community they're a part of. And then the data pieces is how many high school students enrolled in the fall, which comes from ISB's fall enrollment count data files. And then the number of students who, in this case, participated in any CTE program. So that's that number. And then that creates a percentage of students, high school students who participated in any CTE program. So that 91.7% is created by those two numbers that you see above. The number participated divided by the number of high school students. There may be some unique cases in which you may get percentages over 100. I haven't seen any, but in case you come across them, that would just be due to the data point of CTE coming from the report card files versus the high school enrollment, which I'm using as the base, that comes from the fall enrollment count. So those are different data sources. So that could be that incongruence if you're seeing those percentages, which again, I have not come across, but haven't looked at every single district. So if you do find that, just know that that's why that. Now, a couple of other things that you'll see is on the right-hand side, you'll see Illinois statewide, right? So you always have that comparison of statewide participation rates in CTE programs. So there we can see kind of how many students participated in any CTE program in the state in 2023, and how many high school students enrolled in the fall. This same information from the map, which is showing you all the districts across the state, is also here in this table, which is organized alphabetically. And so if that's an easier way for you to navigate and find your particular district, you can also kind of scroll down and look for it kind of alphabetically. And once you find it, if you click on it, it'll highlight where it is on the map. And so that way you can find it a lot faster. Or if you're, wanting to quickly find it again, you can also use this district filter, which the way you use that is to uncheck the all box, type in the name of your district, check the box next to that district, click apply, and then it will filter both the map as well as this table for that district that you selected. You can select multiple districts, as many as you want. And again, just by checking that box next to each district and hitting apply. If you want to reset it to the view that we started with, just go back to the filter, check all, hit apply. Now we're back to seeing all the districts across the state. The second kind of piece of data that's added to this dashboard are community-wide aggregates. And so for each leadership community across the Success Network, we have that data for that region, that community, kind of aggregated, summed together for all the districts that make up that community. And so you can kind of get that value on a regional level, not just a district level. And so again, the same information. Two other things that I'll note that will affect, or I guess three other things that will affect the data that you see in the map and in these tables here are these filters on the left-hand side. So if you click on the school year filter, you can go back and look at past school years. You'll notice that as opposed to the other views of the dashboard, which go all the way back to 2018, CTE data reported in this exact way, participants versus concentrators in different types of programs, only started getting reported out by ISB in 2022. So we only have 2 years of data for this. And so in the future, as we move forward and get more releases of a report card from ISB, we can add to that and have more school years in here. So you can go back and just look at last year, or the 2022 school year, and see what that looked like across the state, statewide, and in the different regions in 2023. So just 2 years of data that we have. Secondly, this is showing students that participated, again, that took one course, at least one course of CTE. You can look at concentrators, students that took 2 or more in a particular program by clicking this filter, so a concentrator, and then it changes the map as well as these values on the right-hand side. And then the last thing that will change the data that you're seeing is the type of CTE program, and ISB calls these career clusters. And so there's quite a few of them. If you click, this is generally all career clusters. So a student that was in any one of these programs, that's defined as the all. And then if you want to go into kind of more the nitty-gritty, particular types of programs that you may work with, like manufacturing, for example, I know there's lots of folks here that do work in manufacturing. You can click on that and see specifically students that are concentrating in manufacturing programs, both the number and then that percentage that creates kind of what we're seeing here as we compare across different districts, both for concentrators and participants. So that's all the information that you can get just from this view. There's also other views that can look at trends, which we only have 2 years. We'll add more as the years go by, as well as demographics. And so I'll show you how to get to that now. And then finally, as some of you may know, if you've used the dashboard, one of the great things about this tool is it allows you to directly compare districts and see kind of how their trends stack up against each other, whether they're districts that are neighboring, districts that partner together, or districts with similar profiles of students. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So let me go back to all and just reset the data that we're looking at. And let's say I have a particular district, which I'll ask in the chat. If anyone in here would can just shout out their district, you can go off mute or put in the chat, and we can investigate kind of more information about that particular district.
Could we look at the Aurora Pathways to Prosperity group, or do you want a different district?
We can start there. So actually, what I'll say, and thank you, Cassie, for that, is whether I look at a community or a region versus the district, the information that you're going to see is the same. It's really just the number of students that we're looking at. So that's fine. We can also look at a region. If you wanted to see this information for a district, all you would need to do is just select that district in the map. So for example, if I was doing Chicago, just click on the outline, and then that takes you to more of that information specific to Chicago. Going back to the map and looking at the Aurora region, to see that same view that I just showed you for a community, you would just select it here in this table. So we'll select Aurora, and you'll notice the exact same view, but now we're looking at it from a regional perspective. And so when you select either a district from the map or a community from the table, what you're going to see now is this kind of trend view, which again, we have only 2 years of data, but we can see the 2-year trends of students both participating and concentrating in CTE programs compared to each other right here. So we can see kind of what have been the trends in this region of students participating and students concentrating. Are we seeing increases? Are we seeing decreases? Are we seeing a leveling off? Which in this case, we're seeing kind of a pretty constant number, although there is an increase of students concentrating and participating, but a higher percentage increase of students concentrating, which is great to see. We want to see those numbers go up. This is for any CTE program, and Cassie, I'm gonna pick on you again. Is there a particular type of program that you're interested in seeing more information about?
Well, I was looking at manufacturing, and then I was doing male, female, and I was really proud of us because it was really close to half and half. And then I was like, well, but what do I know about our manufacturing programs? Like, that's not really, don't really see that equal of a gender distribution when I'm in classrooms. So I wanted to ask you later as a follow-up, you don't have to answer it right now, if we know which of the zip codes roll up into each of these clusters.
That is a great question. We can kind of cover that later, but I'm really loving that these are the types of questions that can come about as you navigate the dashboard, right? Which is the point, is that these can generate questions and have investigations happen. And so, so what we're seeing here is for manufacturing students, we can see what the trends have been for students in those courses when it comes to participating versus concentrating, as well as the demographics of students in that particular CTE program, right? And so what we're seeing here is that in students participating in manufacturing CTE programs, here's the demographic distribution of students, right? And so we can compare that to the enrollment within that particular region and see, kind of ask those questions if you remember from the AP dual credit data, that we can kind of look and see how are these distributions comparing when it comes to students in these programs versus students in our region or in our district. Are we close to an equal representation of students in those classes? Are we seeing that the demographics of students in CTE reflect our community or reflect our district? And that's what we can see kind of plainly in this dashboard here. And so there's a few different ways that you can kind of look at these demographic data. It starts off by looking at race demographics. And Cassie kind of mentioned also that you can also look at gender distributions as well. If you click on this filter that says demographic, there's a bunch of different ways of looking at different demographic groups. And so one way is to look at male-female distribution. And so we can check the way that I would do this is check all, then uncheck all to have it kind of clear out everything, and then select the demographics that you're wanting to see. So if we wanted to compare male-female, we can click those two, hit apply. And now we can see what that distribution looks like for participants, and then for concentrators. And so only a slight change. And you know, as we're seeing here, higher percentage of male students in CTE than female students, but not by a wide margin. And if we wanted to look and drill into specific programs like manufacturing, that gets closer to an equal representation or distribution of students, which is what we would see in that region. This was in 2023. We can go back and look at the previous year and see kind of what progress has been made, which according to the data that we're seeing here, a lot of progress has been made. We had 30% of female students in CT manufacturing programs, and then go to the most recent year, 45%. So a huge jump, which may create questions, especially if you know more background information about your region, and there may be something that's curious about that, or it may be spot on to what you're seeing. Either way, it may generate questions or conversations that need to be had in and amongst your region or district. So this is the kind of the first view of looking at demographics as well as trends within a district or a community. The second thing that you can do with this dashboard, going back to the map, is we can compare, right? We can compare the trends of students within or between districts in a particular region. So like, for example, if I wanted to look at these districts right here in the Starved Rock region, if I wanted to compare them, because I can see them each individually in the map, if I wanted to compare them to each other, the way I would do that is using this lasso tool. If you click and hold your mouse, if you ever use Zillow or any kind of home searching service, you can use that to highlight sections of the map, and that's how you would compare districts. So if I wanted to compare multiple districts like so, I can just highlight each of them, and then I can see them, their trends on the same line graph together and compare them to one another. There's a legend on the right-hand side that tells me which district I'm looking at. I can also hover over the data points in the graph and see which district I'm looking at and what the values are that are creating these percentages. If I want to add any districts or take any away, I can use this filter here that says district and use that to, again, add or take away any districts. If I want to see the statewide trends and just kind of get that as a baseline comparison, I can add, check the box next to it, hit apply, and then it's here. So I can see that all of the districts that I've selected here have higher percentages of students than the state average. Whereas, and specifically, this district here is showing an increase of students concentrating in manufacturing programs. As we get more years of data, as well as you add more districts to the graph, you would expect it can get a little messy or potentially difficult to interpret, which is why there's this table just below the graph, which allows you to see all the districts that you've selected and the years that we have of data in a potentially much easier way to interpret and see right here. Every single data visualization that you've seen, the graphs of participants versus concentrators, the demographic distributions, comparing districts and their trends, all of these data pieces can be downloaded into an Excel file. And so you can have that for your own needs. If you want a more, like a smaller, more curated data set of just a particular group of districts, you have the ability to do that. Or if you want to download this as an image to put into a presentation or to showcase to another audience, You also can download it with this button right here that's just below the Success Network emblem that says choose a format to download. You can download it as an image, it's a PNG file, and attach it to a presentation to fit your needs. This is comparing districts. We also can compare leadership communities. Going back to the map, this is the last view that I'll show you, and I'll stop for questions. There's this button right here that's above the leadership community table that says compare communities. So if you select that button, then we get to this comparison graph for leadership communities. It kind of pre-selects a few for you, and if you want to add or take away any, you can use the leadership community filter and check the box next to any other communities that you may want to add into this and kind of compare depending on whether it's close geographically or close working relationships or whatever the case may be, whether it's demographic profiles of these communities, way to compare progress and see kind of what's happening in different communities, different regions across the state. For every leadership community that you see the trends for, if you scroll down into the table, it will show you all of the districts within that community that make up that aggregate. So whether it's Peoria, Black Hawk, Aurora, each of those communities is listed here with the districts that are associated with them and their individual numbers that, again, create the aggregate. This can be downloaded both in the data file as well as into I will stop there and see if there's any questions. I know there's quite a bit that I showed you. I tried to go as slowly as I could in detail, but if there's any questions or anything that was unclear that you may want to see again, please let me know.
Okay, I have a few questions, Mamusi.
Yeah.
So like right now, for example, I have it set to Aurora West as the district. And then I have it set to architecture and construction as my cluster.
Are you looking at that district individually?
Yes.
Okay, so let's get there together. It's just
Okay.
kind of
Yep.
okay. So if I wanted to find that district quickly, I can uncheck all. Search the district. You can search it by name or by district number. Now that I have that isolated, I'll select the district outline. And this is the view you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And you said,
and then under cluster, I'm at architecture and construction. And then at 2023 concentrator. Okay, so when I hover over where it says male 100%, I get the additional information that there were 29 students who concentrated in this and 23 were male, and that's not 100%. So I'm wondering why that is calculating at 100%, and that like it's other places, it was in a few other places where it doesn't quite seem like the numbers in the additional details are calculating right in the bar chart.
okay. I'm going to make note of that. That is curious. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
And then that whole question of which SIPs roll up to the cluster, because if so if on this same page, if I change from architecture and construction to manufacturing, I just really, and it does it again in this 100% female, like it's 37, 32, that's not 100%. I mean, I've been in West Aurora's manufacturing classrooms, and I know these are concentrators, so they're the group of students that's gone on and done 2 classes, but boy, it does not like it. I wish there were that many girls in the classes. So I think it would help me understand better what SIPs are roll up into a cluster. I will say there's a lot of young women in West Aurora's like pre-engineering classes, and so maybe that's where it's getting skewed, but like this just doesn't line up with what I see when I go in classrooms. So I don't know where we get that info, which SIPs are in the clusters.
Yeah, so when it comes to the report card reporting, there, to my knowledge, that information is not present in the data. And so that's not a question that I can answer based off of what I know about the report card data. Folks from the report card team or even from ISB might be able to answer that for you. But in terms of the data that goes into this dashboard coming directly from the state report card, that zip code data and kind of all that's that goes into making the clusters, it's from by my eyes and what I've seen, it's not something that's clear. And so great question. I wish I had an answer, but I'm not sure. But in terms of the percentages and all of that, that is something I can figure out why that's happening and fix.
And I just want to say, this is going to be super helpful to all of us that are asked annually to look at our data disaggregated for CTE measures. It's going to be really, really helpful when we do that to look for places where we're out of line, where females are overrepresented or males are, or we're not getting EL learners into CTE programs because they're catching up on their EL classes, and it's going to be really, really helpful. So this is, again, great job. That these are so cool. They're so helpful. Thank you very much.
Happy to hear that. And that's the goal, that it can assist you in your work and all that you do. So.
I was just going to say that we can probably connect with the report card team to the question about the SIPs, Mimusi. Is that possible since they're based at NIU? Yeah, we can definitely follow up on that, Cassie. And yes, I agree with Sarah. Thanks for the positive feedback. We're super excited about this dashboard.
Okay, I think with that, I can give you back the sharing privileges, Edith, and we can move to the next part.
Great, thank you so much, Mimusi. We are now going to kick it to Emily, who I think will lead us in a discussion on using the dashboard and getting your feedback.
Yeah, so I think the main thing we wanted to have folks do is get a sense of how easy it is to use the dashboard. And so I think we didn't yet drop a link in the chat here. Let me. Get that to you guys. So take a second to open up the dashboard. And, given Mimusi's presentation of the data included and this kind of clicking through and Cassie's questions and all of that, the first question we wanted to get a sense of is, given your experience with the other views on the dashboard and this new presentation, are you able to access your data in your region easily using this dashboard platform in the way that it's currently designed? And what are any areas that are still sticky for you or more challenging for you to access?
Well, I also have a role as an EFE director that has a larger region than just my leadership community. So, I have 17 member districts in my EFE. And I know how to do it. I just go to the drop down and search for all 17 and then throw the lasso around them. But, that's one thing that I can't do as easily as I can navigate to the Aurora Pathways to Prosperity.
So potentially another layer that might be helpful is an EFE kind of filter.
Especially for this one in particular,
Mhm.
when people, I would hope people would be using this a lot for their, when we have to write all our Perkins goals.
Yeah.
And we have to do all of that. So that would probably be helpful. I don't know if it's as helpful in all the other ones. I don't know how much work it is to do that. Like if it's like weeks worth of work, this CTE dashboard would be the most important one to do it for.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Cassie. And I see Nancy's agreeing with you in the chat. So potentially adding a geographic layer to the CTE data in particular around EFEs as a grouping, which I can understand how that makes sense, given that that's the governance structure for CTE in the state. Any other reflections on how accessible it is or how easy it is to sort of get to the data you want to look at? And thanks, Cassie, for that. So we can move ahead and think about, the data themselves. So we've got a lot of different information on CTE participation and being able to disaggregate it in different ways, by program, by demography. Are these data helpful to you? And are there other related data that we don't currently have on the dashboard that would help you as you're advancing your goals around post-secondary access, around high school success, all those different kinds of things?
Hi, this is Pam. I think that it would be helpful, maybe not high school data, but it's how this relates post-high school. And is there any thought about carrying this on and seeing what kids are doing after they graduate? And then do a little bit of historical data and see really the impact, the long-term impact.
Thanks, Pam. So if I'm hearing you correctly, there's some appetite for more longitudinal data that ties this together with outcomes for students or even participation in different post-secondary opportunities down the line.
Post-secondary or employment.
Yeah, I think broadly at Ed Systems and at the Success Network, we're kind of always trying to think about what are the ways that we can connect the dots across different data. And it's not always possible given data that are available via the report card, which is the source for most of these data. But I think longer term goals could certainly include thinking about how we can make that happen. Rick, definitely. I see your comment in the chat about wanting to see longitudinal data.
And the other thing, like all the Perkins special POPs aren't on here. A lot of them are, and it might be that the numbers are so small and maybe it wasn't worth like building that out but we have additional like Perkins special populations, homeless students, foster care youth, students who have a parent in the on active duty in the military. I think this is a great start, and I don't want to be complaining because I'm not. But if there were any opportunities, and I don't even know, maybe the school report card doesn't have that much in it for those that you could pull from. And then to Rick's point, Rick's area career center director, and I have 2 area career centers in my region, and they're still not getting data specific to the career center. So, they are the producers, if you will, of many of these CTE concentrators we see, but there's no way for them to, there's no boundary for them to grab and to see their unique data. There's 24 area career centers in the state, and I think there's a new one planned for the fall. So I don't know, and that might be a function of the school report card because they also don't exist in the school report card system. But something to consider.
Yeah. I think even where we have limitations of what data might be currently available via the report card or otherwise, it's something we certainly could advocate for with ISB and others. I heard someone else chiming in. Sorry for cutting you off.
I had a question. So to that point, Cassie, is that saying being able to pull just Career Center's data out?
So like, what I would envision is for those that become a participant because they're in a Career Center program, like that would be a separate view. And then for those that become a concentrator because of Career Center participation. So like if your homeschool was generating you as a participant, that would still appear in your homeschool data, or as a concentrator. But then the Career Center could also have a view and say, okay, these 600 students became participants because of their association with the Career Center, and then of these 600, 525 became concentrators, something like that. I think it's tricky because I think it's all how it gets recorded.
Yeah,
But
appreciate the dialogue on the dynamic between the Career Center data and what's attributed to where. And those are questions I know I see Edith taking a lot of notes, and I'm sure Mimosi is as well, that will definitely continue to take into consideration. I want to shift this because I know that we've got a couple more layers to the conversation here, but wanted to just hold some space for how the data are displayed and your feedback there. Are these effective visualizations between the mapping and the graphing? Are you able to find your community information visualized in a helpful way easily? And any ideas you might have about how the visualization aspect of it, the display of the data might be improved. Thanks, Rick, for your comment about looking up data reported by sending schools. I may ask anyone who was at I know there are a couple people on here who were at the regional meeting last week. And so you had a little bit of pre-work essentially for this webinar in engaging with the data. I'm curious if as you were going through the data protocol last week and you were using this particular aspect of the dashboard, if there were any reflections on how the data were presented that stood out to you. Well, we'll take that to mean that it's perfect. Obviously, there's still
Can I just throw in, Emily?
Yeah, go ahead, jump in.
I was just going to say that I had a chance to sit at that meeting next to one of the superintendents of a district that sends to my Career Center. And he was very excited just at the visual nature of the data and a chance to see that. And quite honestly, at his level, he probably doesn't interact with CTE data all the time. And so he was very excited, and we brainstormed some ways that he could share that with his community because it had a good message. So again, I appreciate taking the data, allowing us to see the numbers, but also displaying it in a visual way. And the fact that we can capture that as an image and import that into other documents, I think will be really helpful for presentations. And then it left us, part of our conversation was then, what do we do with some of the needs that like at the Career Center, we have business advisory committees. I would love to look at the data from the business advisory committees and then compare to what they're looking for versus how we're training and see, even on a statewide basis, are we helping to meet some of the needs that our state has in employment?
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Rick. That's really exciting to hear how we're always excited to have people engage with data that they don't necessarily have access to or don't necessarily think to access all the time, and how that can seed really constructive conversations. Thank you all very much. Obviously, I know there will be continuous opportunities for feedback, but I'm handing back to Mimosi for some engagement with the data.
Yeah, thank you. So with this dashboard tool, kind of getting your feet wet. I know there are some power users among us and folks that consistently use this, and so the best way to get comfortable is by going in and diving into the data. And so if we can, we'd love to take a moment to engage you with the dashboard. And so we'd like you to explore the districts in your region. And so you can use the dashboard to search for your local school district or group of districts in your leadership community. And with that information that you're seeing in the dashboard, we'd like you to try to answer the following 2 questions. First, what do you notice about the demographics of students who are participating or concentrating in CTE programs? And then second, are there any significant changes or patterns that catch your attention? Edith.
Well, in the Aurora Pathways to Prosperity region, some general statements is that CTE participants are whiter and they get whiter as we toggle to concentrators. EL learners are definitely missing the opportunity for CTE as both participants and concentrators. And in our region, low income students are overrepresented in both participants and concentrators compared to their demographics in the general student population.
Thank you for that observation.
So I'm looking at non-trad participation for my region because that's an area that we are constantly not hitting the mark. And we've been doing some marketing and some recruitment. And so just looking at construction and education, we have increased non-trad participation from 22 to 23 in both concentrators and participants. So I'm glad to see that hopefully that's an upward trend that will continue, but the longitudinal data would definitely help with that. So I'm just going down the rabbit hole too. So it's.
Love it. Love to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for engaging with the data. We hope that you'll continue to engage with it, and we will take all the feedback into consideration and figure out what additional information we're able to provide.
I think I may have found in the Illinois state course system where EFE directors approve programs, which SIPs roll up to which clusters.
Oh.
But I mean, without someone at ISB confirming that that's where it's pulling from. But when we go into the Illinois state course system and do EFE assignments, it shows 8 SIPs that roll up to AFNR. And it looks like the cluster structure that is in the dashboard is what's here on this page. So I should go to manufacturing, see if I can answer any questions.
I wonder if it would be helpful to be able to drill down that far, to have that on the dashboard, that information readily.
I think it would.
Us, it might.
But I also wonder how often you would get those can't display because the numbers are too small.
Yeah. But this is definitely more useful than those reports that we get out of ISCS, for our reports. So
for sure. Yeah, this is super useful.
I look forward to having 5 years worth of data that I can use.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. And please complete the survey. It's 2 questions. And we will continue to keep you updated as we get more information on the dashboard.